Welcome back to Spilling the Tea podcast with Halen and Kiki.
And this is episode 4. Hi, bestie.
Hi, Keeks.
How are you today?
I am living the dream.
Are you?
We are.
So am I. I'm very excited today because we get to teach our listeners a little bit more about LGBTQIA.
Okay.
How do you feel about that?
I think Jess, our grant writer, shout out to her.
Shout out, Jess.
She said, why don't you guys do a podcast on just the basics? You know, I think we've been in it for so many years that we forget. Like, let's just take it all the way back so people kind of understand what LGBTQIA plus means. It's a lot of letters. I get it.
Yeah. So L stands for
Lesbian.
B.
Bisexual.
T.
Trans.
Q.
Questioning.
I.
Intersex.
A.
I don't know.
Asexual.
Okay.
So you see, even we are still learning, and also like we may forget at times that we're trying. But yeah, that's what LGBTQIA plus stands for. And yeah, I feel like there are a lot of people out there that don't know what it means.
Right. I think it's about 5% of the population. And just FYI, LGBTQIA plus people have been around since the beginning of time in every culture. We can educate you on that a little bit, but I don't want to make this
they've always existed.
Yeah, it's just really impossible for us to be this evolved as a society and really think that there is only two genders, like masculine male and like feminine female, with the entire spectrum of the human genome.
Yeah.
What do you think?
No, I agree. And I think that there's something that I want to address about the LGBTQIA plus like title, and instead it really pisses me off when people are like, oh, LGBTQIA plus, it's like the whole ABC. That's like so ignorant and so offensive. Like, put some respect, you know what I mean?
I think
going
that
back,
Kiki,
I get very mad really quickly,
and it's because,
especially when they mess with our teens.
It's because of the love that she has for the teens.
As an ally, yes.
I think when we see their pain firsthand, when we see their suffering firsthand, when we understand that it is real, the pain and the suffering and the discrimination, you know, there's an importance in inclusivity and including everyone, and that's why they continue to try to include different things. But for a quick lesson, like, put your hand here. Daddy has taught me this.
Shout out, bestie. Thank you for bringing the pastries to next vigil, by the way. But okay.
Amazing. Right? So this is in our head, in your brain, you know, right? This is what you believe in your head, that you know your identity of what you are, right?
Yes.
And then now come down to your lap, right? This is different from your sex or your genitals, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's also going to be different from, say, your heart, which is who you love and who you're attracted to. And does that make sense, right? But these are all very different. It's not like your sexuality is the same as your gender, right? And so just do this last one. This is gender expression. So your clothing or the way that you present yourself to the world. All of these things are different. And I don't expect you to be experts or anything like that. But the bottom line is respect people for who they are and who they say they are, because they are actually the experts of themselves, right?
Yes.
And to not say like, you're gross or you're weird or you don't belong here or something's wrong with you, like, they're just different from the majority of the population. And so that's what I kind of wanted to
Yeah,
share.
it's like someone comes to me and they're like, you're not Kiki. I'm like, who are you to tell me I'm not Kiki?
Right.
Like, I'm living in this body 24/7. Like, who are you to tell me who I am? You know? And I think it's very important that we take these educations to the schools, you know, because the kids spend so much time in school, and you know, we see it at the cafe all the time. But one of the main, I would say, bullies, like the main bullies, they come from school.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like
absolutely.
Ignorance from the peers or even the
teachers,
professors.
Honestly, teachers.
Yeah, our educators, they're lacking of that education, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I actually don't hold it against them. I just feel that there needs to be the education, embedded, because a lot of kids now, they are feeling more comfortable, right? That's why. It's not because there's more trans, because I know that there's a lot of myths out there like that, but the actual research shows, right, that our kids are feeling more comfortable to express who they are, especially Gen Z and Gen Alpha. And that's kind of what we want to see. We want the next generation to have it a little bit easier. I think now with all of the anti-trans legislation, we know that like 20 years ago, it was the gays, right? Like, and so, and things are not perfect for gay people, but my point is that even within this community, there's still silos and there's still like a hierarchy, and there's still, we know that trans women are most discriminated against, and they're highest risk.
Is there a reason why? Do you know?
Well, I think that the way that there's a narrative, right, put upon them, and the way that media has always shown them, especially in America, and saying that they're groomers or saying that they're like pedophiles, when really like there's no research that shows that it's trans people who are doing the child abuse, sexual abuse. It's actually cisgendered white men, old men.
Or Korean.
So that's another episode too. We have to do one. We will.
Trigger warning.
Yeah.
SA.
So what I wanted to really highlight about this is that even within our community, we need to look within, right? I know that I'm not part of the community, and I think we have to always acknowledge our privilege and understand that like we are cisgendered and we are allies, but we have to continuously learn from the community. And that's a big reason for this podcast as well, because we want these leaders to be possibility models for our kids. We want them to come to Spill the Tea Cafe and lead Spill the Tea Cafe, right, in this way. And so anything...
I would also address the parents, the support starts at home. If you're not being supportive to your child, how do you expect a stranger to support your child? So if your kid comes out to you, they are coming out because they trust you. They think that you are going to support them. And I think that, it's hard. I mean, firsthand as a parent, it's hard, but there's nothing wrong with your kid. Your kid doesn't need a cure, because this is not something that you can fix. This is who they are authentically. And I also think that what they need is the support of someone that's going to be like, hey, doesn't matter who you are or who you show up as, I am going to love you regardless, unconditionally. And you need to be that, I would say, like, protector or like shell to the outside world, because I do think that the outside world is extremely cruel.
What about those parents that we always have? And I was one of those parents, so I don't judge anyone, and I think that's something unique about my situation. Parents like myself saying that's just a trend. I don't really believe that you're gay. I don't really believe that you're in this community. I think it's just kind of like a trending thing, right now. What do you say to those parents?
It's not. Like you said earlier, the reason why these kids are more popular or there's more of them, it's because they are finding the comfortable scenario to come out and share who they really are. Last week or 2 weeks ago, when we had the vigil at Spill the Tea Cafe, we actually had this mom who has a 40-year-old son, and they are transgender male. When they first came out, they were, I believe, 12 years old. And since then, they have had unconditional support from the parents.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
That is amazing.
We don't typically hear that.
Yeah.
And honestly, I know many, many, many people well into their 40s, well into their 50s, even in their 60s, who come out at that time, whether it's gay or whether it's, trans. Sometimes they built a whole life because really they were just trying to be accepted by society.
Yes.
And
they were trying to fit into a box that they had outgrew a long, long, long time ago.
Right. And they're just trying to survive, right? But I think there comes a point, and this is why it kind of gets dark, but it is a truth of the matter, that suicidality is so, so prevalent in this population, because what are the other options, right? Like if you're not living in your authentic self. And so we hope that parents can look at their kid. And if your kid is being persistent about it, if your kid is being consistent about it, right? Please remember that most kids, actually all the kids I've worked with, they don't want to be trans, right? Like it's easier to be straight in this straight world. And so when they come out to you, they have been thinking about it for months, even years. And so when they finally get that courage to tell you, and then you come out and say something like I did, like, oh, I think that's just a trend. Like, I think you're too young. I don't even think you know what you're talking about. It crushes them and it crushes their heart and their soul because they work so hard to build up that courage to tell you.
Yes, please don't dismiss them. And if you are unsure on how to react, just go to a therapist, talk to a professional, find the resources. I think that, for example, a parenting group. I think the reason why it's so popular and it's always, full seats, it's because, we even have like gay parents that come to our group, and even they are having a hard time understanding their LGBTQIA plus kids.
Yes.
So it definitely takes a lot of learning, lots of reading, lots of getting educated,
and willingness to look at yourself. I think that's the hardest part, right? Is like the willingness to look at yourself. We know parents who go their whole life without that willingness to look at themselves. And what does that result in? It results in you not having a genuine, authentic relationship with your child. I always say, and I don't say it with disrespect, but I always say to parents, we all get a performance review at some point after we raise our kids, right? That performance review might look like, your kid's not coming home for Christmas, or you not having your kids call you. Again, I'm not saying that parents deserve that, but my point is like, you can't just automatically expect a very close relationship with your child if you're not really open with them, and if you don't actually hear them and you don't validate them, you don't see them. And so it does require, I think, another level of self-awareness in this generation.
Absolutely. I have a family member of mine. He's like, I would say like in the 50s, and he's always been gay. My parents know, my cousins know, my aunties, my uncles, everyone knows. And he's had a partner for like 20 plus years. Mm-hmm. They live together. They have their own dogs together. And his mom still thinks that they're just roommates.
Right.
Just because she's extremely Christian. She's extremely conservative. And in her head, she wants to convince herself that, no, they're not gay. They are just roommates. And that kind of translates into this family member of ours not coming home for the holidays, him choosing to go on vacation instead during that time. He's missed multiple birthdays because of that scenario.
Yeah. And I do have to call out this narrative because it's not just, I guess, in the American culture, right? There's a lot of cultures where Christianity is kind of creating this narrative about love the sinner, not the sin, or whatever, when literally all of us are sinners. And not only that, but we cannot utilize this narrative. Like, there are actually like Christian schools in Hawaii who will not allow their school counselors to work at Spill the Tea Cafe because we are an inclusive space. Just to clarify, we service all youth, right? Inclusive all youth, but we really want to make sure people don't have to question, are we allies? Yes, we are allies, right? And so even in Hawaii in 2024, we have Christian schools who are saying, if you work at Spill the Tea, we'll fire you. And I won't name the school because I have like respect in that way. But my point is,
I will, but then I'll get fired.
No, but how is that spreading love in any way, right? And how is this Christian narrative of like, oh, God says that's a sin, when there's so many other things in the Bible, like, we got stoned to death, and there's like prostitutes, and like we don't like mention those things, but you're very like, what I was trying to say is that you can't just pick and choose verses from the Bible to cover up your hate, like to promote it as like, oh, this is what God wants.
Yeah.
You don't even know if that's what God wants. Like,
yeah,
seriously.
And I feel like if God is real, he is a person of love, and all he would want for anyone in this floating rock is to love each other and accept each other without doing any harm.
Right.
That's what I feel. That's how I see my God.
Yes, and in my heart, I know that God made my kid perfect the way he is, and he is trans. And I know, like, I'm not supposed to have favorites, right? But Maddie is such a good kid. Like, I'm just saying, how can we even question whether or not?
Bestie, don't cry now. Don't cry. Sorry, Mom. Mom loves you a lot.
So much.
And Mom is so proud of you. I hope you know that.
It's like, why are you going to try to act like something's wrong with my kid? You know, and I'm proud of myself for getting here because I wasn't always here, right?
Yeah, no, it took a lot of work. It
Yes.
took lots of tears.
Lots of communication.
Yeah.
I actually credit a lot of like bridging the gap through empathy, compassion, but mostly education. Like I didn't know like so much, and Stanford Gender Clinic was really instrumental in like educating me. I mean, even other doctors here in Hawaii educating me on the science behind it, right? And once you understand that and you look a little bit deeper, it will really shine light on the truth. And so one thing as an ally is you don't have to do your own kind of research, but it does help. It's really annoying for kids for you guys to go up to them and just expect them to give you an education lesson on every single thing. Like I have random people, you guys have no idea how many people call me or come up to me and want to like tell me about my trans kid and their opinion about me raising them. And really it's just, I understand you can be curious, but in a way, I don't know if this is politically correct, but would you go up to someone that's different in any other way and then like ask the parent like, oh, what's wrong with your kid? And tell me like why they have this and why they have that, right? Or it's just it's so odd that people feel that they can do that.
It's disrespectful. If you're curious, just ask the person, you know, directly.
Yeah.
I would say, of course, don't try to do it in an open space, public space. Right. If you can, like, just ask them, like, hey, you know, I know you are
going through
transgender or you're going through your own journey. Would you mind, like, sharing with me or educating me on some things that I could do to support you better? Yeah. Like, what are some things that I could do to have your back? Right. What is something that I should not be doing? You know what I mean? Because I also see that there's a lot of people that want to help, but they just don't know how. Right. And they will often make mistakes.
Yes. And I think something that even I struggle with even now is misgendering. Do you want to talk about misgendering?
Yes. So there are a few different pronouns. There's she, hers, they, them, he, him. And you know, when you are talking to someone, meeting someone for the first time, you always want to introduce your name, but also introduce your pronouns because, again, I may look like your typical female, but I may identify myself as non-binary, which is gender neutral, or I may identify myself with they, them, or he, him. You know, you cannot just assume by someone's physical appearance or what they're wearing. What was the question?
Yeah.
Sorry. I think Halen's ADHD is rubbing on me.
Yes. And so when you misgender someone, it can really invalidate them.
Yes.
Like if they really want to be seen, right, for who they are, and they say, hi, I'm Halen, my pronouns are he, him, but you continuously misgender me and call me a girl or like call me she, her, when maybe my dysphoria is so bad around it. And dysphoria means that you have such a discomfort, sometimes to the level of panic attacks, sometimes to the level of I can't even take a shower, sometimes to the level of I'm not going to speak for 6 months because my voice is so high, right?
Or so low.
Right. And it's not something to question or argue with a kid about this. Like, this is their truth, right? Like, how much more do you need from them? They're suicidal. They're not going to school. They're, you know, like, how much more are you going to question them and say, oh, you're not dysphoric? They are dysphoric. I'm telling you, they are dysphoric. And so we want to make sure that we can, first and foremost, try to address that dysphoria, right? And if we can address that dysphoria, sometimes it just means dressing a different way, right? Other times it means having to talk about puberty blockers.
Or going to voice
coaches, right? There's so many different ways. And so that's why it's important for us as allies or as parents to not just assume, right? Like, okay, well, you're gay or like you're non-binary. There's no such thing as bisexual. You need to choose one, right? these are common mistakes. And again, I've been there, made all the mistakes. I made all the mistakes. But
it's okay because you made them and then you had your learning lesson.
Right.
And now you're different. You know, because there's also some other people that they will continue to make the mistake. They will continue to be offensive and they still choose to do the same because they don't want to change.
Right.
Because they don't think there's anything wrong with them.
Right. And as a parent, I just felt, I really didn't care so much like, oh, something's wrong with my kid. It was more so my kid's gonna have a hard life. It's gonna be painful. Like, I don't want them to have to go through that. Like, I don't want my family to be mean to them, right? Like, there's all these other things that are so separate from actually like seeing my kid. And so I just encourage other parents to know that it is a journey, but you have to show up for your kid in a way that like you are the leader, right? Like, don't expect your kid who's 10 years old or 12 years old or 14 years old to know exactly what their identity is. And if they don't know, then they're lying, right?
Yeah.
Have them help you understand and be the leader. And you might have to have conversations with your family the way I did. I mean, I grew up in a very ultra-conservative Christian home, and I have nothing bad to actually say about Christianity because most of the people I love are Christian, but I had to spell out, here are the things that you can say in front of my kid. Here are the things you cannot say in front of my kid. Like, you cannot say my kid's going to hell. You cannot say right? Because of my kid's mental health. Like, and because I am the mother and I'm not going to allow anyone to speak to my child that way. And it is hard, right? Because I love these people. And so you say it in a way, you lead with love. You don't have these conversations that are like super explosive. That's not going to help anyone, right? But saying these are the reasons why, I hope as an Ohana, as a family, we can all put our differences aside and show up for my son when he needs us, and also in times of celebration, right? This is what families do. And
I think as a parent, you got to lead by example.
And if you cannot respect these, I hope you can. But if you cannot respect these, then we won't be coming around anymore. You know, it was a very hard conversation. And guess what? Everybody is okay with my kid and my family now. You know?
Which I think that, you know, it's kind of hard and sad to say like, oh, Matt is really lucky, because that should be the bare minimum. You know what I mean? In all families, like that should be the standard. You know, you should be able to walk into your home and know that, oh, every single person in this room has my back.
Right.
You
unconditionally.
know, unconditionally, regardless of who I am, how
I
dress.
How does Puerto Ricans handle like LGBT? Is it like a stigmatized thing, or is it more open?
We are pretty open. We are very, very open. But I do think that it took us a minute to get here. You know what I mean? Like, it hasn't always been like this.
Right.
It hasn't always been like that. But, you know, as younger generations come up, you know, and are bold and raise their voices, they are more accepting. Like, the older people have become more accepting, but it hasn't always been like that. There's always been many, many, many barriers when it comes to LGBTQIA.
Yeah, and also I just have to shout out, like, you know, I'm not native Hawaiian, obviously, but I was born and raised here, and we do have to shout out like all of the actual native Hawaiians, because, you know, the Mahu culture from way back when, like, they have reclaimed that title, and it's not like a derogatory term, and we understand that, you know, Mahu culture was very respected in the Hawaiian culture, and like they were almost like spiritual leaders. And
I loved learning about it.
And then for
it was very interesting too.
The colonizer style to come in and just like take all that.
Yeah.
Right? Like, let's start living more authentically, and let's stop living in these rules and these like like these societal like you know, I guess they're just social constructs at the end of the day. And let's try to drown out all of the noise and then focus on our kid. I think that's what we can lead with.
Yep, I agree. And, you know, don't forget, it really just takes one adult to reduce suicide rates by 40%. So all you have to do is just show up for the teen, you know.
It doesn't have to
how
be a
can
parent.
I help?
It could be a teacher. It could be a coach. It could be a counselor. Like, just one supportive adult is literally, it will save an LGBTQI plus kid's life. Promise.
Period. Bestie, where can they find us? What's our Instagram?
Spill_the tea cafe.
And our website?
spilltheteacafe.org.
And if you want to get in touch with us, you can email us at info@spilltheteacafe.org, or you can text or call at 808-797-5043 to schedule an appointment.
See you guys in the next episode.
High five.